on the nature of the soul. So, what is a soul and how does it grow? The soul is a mutable consciousness, mutable energy. It never dies, it simply changes form. And how the soul grows is through its desire nature. The moment that the soul has a desire, it is creation in motion. The soul seeks to realize that desire in order to become more than it is already. Now, we live in a duality universe, day, night, yin, yang, masculine, feminine. The soul has within it dual coexisting desires. The first desire within the soul is to separate from itself. The separation impulse corresponds to breath out, yang energy, energy moving away from center. In this half of the program, the soul is desiring to experience the separate self, macrocosm reflecting microcosm, to know itself as creator. This is the development of I am consciousness, or a self-image, or an ego self. It is the development of individuality, identity, ego. Jesus, Buddha, whoever had to have one before they could relinquish it, it is just the program. Now, the other half of the program is what we call the returning to source desires, and that is represented by, or corresponds to, breath in, yin energy, returning to center. And in this half of the program, the soul desires to create unity, oneness, and wholeness, right? So built within both of these programs, there is an attraction resistance impulse as well, to a frictional nature. And the attraction resistance impulse, we would ask then, in the first half of the program, if the soul's creating the desire in the first place, why would it have any resistance to going there, right? It is in the moment that the soul has a desire of a separating nature, that it is siphoning off some of its energy or its power in order to re-energize itself. It is losing in order to gain. And what it loses here is a sense of unity, oneness, and wholeness. All right. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, that returning to source desires, why would there be any resistance to creating unity, oneness, and wholeness? Exactly the same. Again, losing in order to gain. Here we are losing the hard-won victories of me, myself, and I. All right. Like two sticks rubbed together to make fire, more friction, more energy. It is the frictional energy that propels the momentum. So that friction, eventually that becomes densified material, materialized, plunk you into your karmas, off to the races you go. All right, okay. So in terms of evolutionary astrology, we look to planet Pluto to describe the soul path, where the soul has come from, why one has set up the life the way one has. Pluto travels on the outermost rim of our solar system. It takes 248 years to go around once. It takes 12 to 30 years to go through a sign. So the 248-year transit corresponds to collective eras. And we are coming to a crossroads in right now in 2022, 2023, 2024. And the 12 to 30 years ties you to a soul group, i.e. the generational pull. And then it is specific on how it's set up in your chart. So where is your Pluto? What sign is it in? And how is it aspected by the rest of the chart? This is important information. So the soul, Pluto, Pluto is the ruling planet of Scorpio. Scorpio is the regenerative archetype, death and rebirth, and it's why it fits perfectly with giving it jurisdiction over the soul and reincarnation. And so the soul path, the Pluto position, is going to show you where your soul has come from, how far you have come to, what your innate psychology is, the soul's deepest desire for its own evolution, and its deepest unconscious or rooted security patterns. That all corresponds with Scorpio, which is a fixed archetype. Fixed is its temperament, water is its element. The soul is fixed or fixated on its own evolution. And the nature of fixed is resource rich, right? So it's got a lot of resource in there. As a fixed archetype, it is also rooted. So that idea of the resistance factor plays strongly in here. So why would we have any resistance? Well, we fall back on the familiar. Right. And desire is the determinant of evolution. The Pluto position in your chart, Scorpio is the archetype where you come face to face with your own evolution. You come face to face with your own choice makings. And wherever that Pluto sits is where your soul has deemed it important to take a deeper dive into your own evolution. So that's very important. Now, we are moving through a very big transit as Pluto finishes up its travel through the sign of Capricorn, which it has been doing since 2008. In March of 2023, Pluto will move into Aquarius for the first time in 248 years. So this is very rare. It's a once in a lifetime transit for all of us. And between March of 2023 and November of 2024, Pluto will move back and forth between Capricorn, finishing up its work in Capricorn, and giving us previews of its transit through Aquarius. Is going to move into Aquarius solidly in November of 2024, and it will continue till 2044. So it is important to look at. And the chart itself, in terms of those separating and returning to source desires, in the 12-fold stages of initiation, starting from the horizon line, from the ascendant, moving in a counterclockwise direction around the zodiacal wheel, everything in there represents the separation desires, the development of me, myself, and I, and correspondingly, starting from the ascendant, moving around the wheel in the 12-fold stages of initiation, everything in there, every symbol also corresponds to the returning to source desires. Essentially, what I'm saying is that every item in the chart is multidimensional. It's like you can open a file cabinet and read from the front files, the back files, and the middle files. So astrology is very complex, is brilliant as a field of study, and it is a very useful tool right now. I always say that the chart is a blueprint, and it is, of all that you've been, all that you've experienced as your various incarnations, and the memory pools, memory imprints that you've brought into this lifetime from the past. And it's also a map, right? It gives you a sense. Is really good to consult the map if you're going to travel, right? And so it gives you a map, and will display the chart itself is showing the present time, but it's an intersection really of your present life, where you've come from, and where the soul intends to go to. All right. Now, soul is created by source, the divine, God, goddess, universal consciousness, universal source, whatever terminology you want to use. That corresponds to the sign archetype of Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune and is the 12th house archetype, the last of the 12 signs of the zodiacal wheel, where we complete a journey to begin a new journey. And the archetype of Pisces is yin, and it's mutable. All water signs, Scorpio is a yin archetype as well too. It's fixed energy. Fixed energy is rooted, it's resistant, it's resource rich. The mutable sign of Pisces, well, mutability is ever changing, and God is an evolving force, and so are you. And so Pisces archetype corresponds to the infinite. It corresponds to the oceanic experience, and so forth. So source, or the divine, or whatever you'd like to call it, will project and create an individualized ego, individualized soul, I meant to say, by which it can outpicture, observe, and reflect that which it desires for its own evolution. This is like putting the lens in the camera so you can play the movie. All right. And soul, Pluto, Scorpio archetype, 8th house archetype, will also outpicture itself in terms of creating an ego self or a self-image by which it can outpicture, observe, and reflect upon itself. This is, again, another lens in the camera. And the archetype of the self-image, the ego self, corresponds to the Cancer archetype, the fourth house archetype, the moon archetype. All right. And so the fourth house and Cancer archetype, all the water signs correspond to the past, legacies of the past. Cancer archetype in particular is early childhood and the imprinting of family and the imprinting of ancestry. So, what we come in with there. The Cancer archetype, yin, again, is the emotional body, and we are here in this time-space continuum to evolve through our emotional body. Now, the Cancer archetype is the archetype of the search for self-consistency. And it has ties to the past. The Cancer archetype is also cardinal yin. Cardinal is activating yin. And so the activating yin of the ego self or self-image will play the movie for the soul so that soul can self-examine and confront its own choice makings in order to evolve. So this is the Trinity, the water Trinity, a Cancer, Moon, fourth house archetype relative to the eighth house, Pluto, Scorpio archetype relative to the 12th house, Pisces, Neptune archetype here. And that is the Trinity of water. And so in terms of the nature of desire and how the process of your evolution, how long you take to evolve is completely up to you. How long you take to move through your evolutionary choices and lessons and learning, this is absolutely up to you. But the whole journey of moving from ego to soul to source is the progressive elimination of all separating desires until there is but one, to return to source, to expand consciousness into the infinite realm, and to turn up that inner light, so that the shift goes from center of consciousness being rooted in ego to a shift of consciousness of rooted to soul, to shift of consciousness rooted back to source. And this is the process of evolution. And this is describing the philosophy, the basic core philosophy behind evolutionary astrology. Pluto answers the question, why? Why has the soul set up the life the way it has? And in the methodology that we practice, when we look at the natal chart, the lunar nodes, the south and north nodes, are the lunar nodes, are the nodes of the moon. And they're commonly used in astrology. And these are imprints that we come in with, subconscious content. The subconscious is always playing somewhere back there, behavior patterns, circumstances of the past. It's a fallback pattern. And so it is that interplay between ego and soul that we look at when we work through and analyzing the chart in terms of Pluto and the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are not planetary energies, they're sensitive points, and they correspond to the moon's travel in relationship to the plane of the ecliptic, that's the plane of the sun, and in relationship to our earth plane, and how those three are interfacing with one another. So the lunar nodes in the chart represent the ego development, the evolving ego, and the Pluto placement is your soul path, your deepest unconscious desires for evolution. It's your soul psychology, ties you to Pluto's transit, spends 12 to 30 years through a sign axis. It's going to tie you to a soul group, a generational group, and it's going to be individualized on how it's set up in your chart. So I hope you have gotten a little bit out of this presentation today, and I invite you to look deeper into the study of evolutionary astrology, there's so much free material out on the internet for you to learn a little bit more about your chart. Thank you for joining me today.